Thank you, Holly, and welcome, Tamara. We're so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here.
So before we jump into it, I have to call out the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I'm only wearing one Jimmy Choo shoe. I wanted to wear two, but one was really all I could muster. Have you ever been interviewed by someone only wearing one shoe?
No, I haven't. This is a new experience.
Okay, hopefully we can make it a great one. So your new book, In My Shoes, is a very honest memoir, a tell-all, if you will. As Holly mentioned, about your early career at British Vogue through to co-founding Jimmy Choo, then exiting the company and really turning a new leaf in your life. So why now? What prompted you to write the book now?
Well, starting a new chapter, I thought it was a great way to close one chapter and enter a new one. And I also thought no one's going to really believe what was really going on behind the scenes at Jimmy Choo.
Yeah, there's some pretty salacious stories there, really, really exciting and challenging, certainly. So you're somewhat of a self-taught businesswoman. In the book, you talk about your father's influence. Tamara's father, for those of you that don't know, co-founded Vidal Sassoon, so a very savvy businessman in his own right. But you talk about how he offered you insights and guidance. But a great deal of your learning was through trial and error. So, for example, your experience with equity deals, private equity deals, and your troubles there. So for those of us in the audience who have an entrepreneurial bent or perhaps want to start our own companies, what advice do you have?
Well, when I founded Jimmy Choo, obviously my goal was to make beautiful shoes.
Right.
I didn't realize that I would be getting into the private equity world. And I entered it because Jimmy decided to sell his shares in 2001, and obviously he had a right to sell them to whoever he wanted, and that's how private equity came into the business. So I had to learn very quickly. I was dealing, with investment bankers, the financial world, and so it was really a self-education.
Definitely. And something you just mentioned, going through the business world, I imagine that sometimes it felt very much like a man's world. What were the challenges that you found in being a woman in this sometimes man's world? I faced things which I really didn't expect to face in today's world. Very much as a woman, you still get diminished and discounted. Your opinions are very much discounted. And strangely enough, I ended up being on the board of Jimmy Choo with 10 men, and I was the only woman, right,
which is sort of illogical, really, if you think about it. And also, I was dealing with unequal pay. So discovering all these things on my journey was also part of why I wrote the book, because I wanted to really address a lot of these issues and things I noticed about women's behavior in the workplace compared to men was very different, and I wanted to address that in the book as well.
Fantastic. Yes, there's definitely a theme of empowerment as a woman, as a businesswoman in the book. You also have some fantastic charitable efforts that we'd love to hear more about.
Well, I'm going to be starting a foundation with the Tamara Mellon brand, and it's to work on women's rights for gender discrimination and equal pay, and also dealing with the sex slave trade.
Wonderful, wonderful. You became something of a celebrity during the course of running Jimmy Choo shoes. A funny outtake from your book, which I loved, someone came up to you and asked for your autograph on their receipt from their first pair of Jimmy Choo shoes. So a great indicator of this, fan base that you'd created. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that experience and how you really leveraged it to build the brand.
What's important for a brand, particularly starting off, is that you have someone that embodies the brand and a story to tell, and someone that they can buy into or identify with. So really, if you think about most big brands, they have a personality attached, and you buy into that person, you buy into the story they're telling. Because when you're also creating a brand, you're creating a woman. So it's a fantasy in my head maybe about the woman I want to be, and maybe other women sort of want to be that as well. So when you're creating the product, when you're creating it, it's a one woman, it's her world, and it's a vision.
And you really lived that life to a degree.
And then I ended up, I didn't expect that.
Right.
But then when we realized that journalists wanted to do interviews about the company, that I was really the only one who could do it because I was creating the product and I was running the operations of the business. So that really I was the only one that could speak to what was going on in the business. Right. So it happened to me by default, really. Sure. And then once you're in the limelight, then people become fascinated with your personal life, and they become so it just it all kind of opens up.
Right. So you talked a little bit about really understanding this woman that you're catering to and her aesthetic, with the launch of your new collection, the Tamara Mellon Namesake Collection, which is coming out very, very soon. It includes ready-to-wear accessories, handbags, and more. What type of woman are you designing for? You mentioned a lot that you inject your own personal DNA, being a working mother, as well as the globetrotter, being very modern. These are aspects that we've seen in the Jimmy Choo line. Are they things that we'll also see in the Tamara Mellon line?
Definitely, it follows with me because it's my DNA, but in a very modern way. The most exciting thing with the new brand was starting with a clean slate and thinking about the woman today, particularly with the business model. That's very different of our psychology and how we want to shop today, because the world has changed since I started Jimmy Choo. We're living in a very different world.
Right, right. Well, nobody's bigger digital enthusiast than we are, and the way that you're using digital to launch your new brand is very, very interesting. You're really turning the traditional model on its head. So you're leading with digital. The e-com platform is going to be pretty much the primary outlet for this brand, with brick and mortar locations coming up later next year. Can you tell us a little bit about that strategy?
It's when I looked at the way we live today, what happens is a fashion show goes up online as soon as it happens, and everybody sees it. And that never used to happen. Only the press and buyers would see the fashion show, and the customer would see the product when it was in a magazine and went into a store. So as a customer, we're looking at that product for 6 months before it gets into the store. So by the time it hits the shop floor, we're a bit like, oh God, I'm just over it now. I've looked at it for too long. And we want the next new thing. Right. So, and also the world is, we're buying things in the wrong season because the department stores have really pushed out to get things on the floor early so they can sell it, they can beat their customers, which means we've ended up with coats on the floor in July, spring summer dresses going in January. Who wants to buy that? I don't want to buy a coat in July, and I don't know any woman that wants to do that, or who can even think about a product that they're going to wear in 4 months' time. You want to buy something now and you want to wear it tomorrow. Right. So I have a business model that is seasonless, and it goes into stores monthly, and it's a different fashion concept every month, but it's what you're going to want to wear in that month. Interesting, interesting. And how are you finding that this is being received in the fashion industry? Because again, this is not the traditional model. I don't know why you're the first person to do this, because it makes so much sense. But I'm wondering how you found the reception. The customer is clear and loud, yes. I mean, I love communicating with my customers on Twitter and Instagram, and the messages I'm getting back is, thank God, someone's finally doing this, this is what we want. So the customer is there. The industry, we're pushing them a little bit to get on board with it. Department stores, they've bought it. We're going to be in, Bergdorf's and Neiman's and Net-a-Porter. Net-a-Porter is actually there. They're also pushing designers to do it. But the traditional bricks and mortar department stores are worried about, well, if you have new product going in January when all our autumn winter is on sale, how's it going to look on the floor? How's the customer going to react? But I'm pushing and I'm just saying, just test the customer, because I know it's what she wants. So I think once they see the customer's response, then they'll really get behind it. So this isn't the first time you've pushed the envelope with Jimmy Choo. You definitely pushed the creative envelope and launched new products. What was your favorite throughout your time being there? Was there a specific collection or project you worked on that comes to mind as being a favorite? Oh, I have a lot of babies from Jimmy Choo. Yeah. But I would say my favorite things are, animal print, leopard print, zebra. I love fringe, studs, glitter. Anything included. So if you see a product with any of those things on, a little bit of rock and roll. Okay, okay. Yeah. So just going back to your new collection, the way it's being released, this puts an even
larger importance on staying ahead of trend, which is something that fashion brands grapple with all the time. How do you manage to stay ahead of trends?
Well, a normal fashion brand designs a year ahead.
Yep.
And it's often what you want in your life then, but you've got to wait a year for it. It's very frustrating. So now I can design something and I can have it on the shop floor 3 months later. So from design, from a sketch to on shop floor, it's a much shorter window. So I can really gauge the temperature of the customer and what we're feeling and what we want right then in that moment.
Okay, okay. So you are all about taking on challenges and reinventing yourself to a degree. What's next for you?
Next. I haven't started this one. Hardly started this one yet.
Well, in your book, you know, I'm sure you guys will all enjoy reading it, but Tamara takes on challenge after challenge, often at the same very time. So while you were working on Jimmy Choo, you also started reinventing Halston.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be out of character for you to take on multiple projects at a time, but I could completely understand if a vacation was what you needed in the near future.
No, you're absolutely right. Actually, while I was writing the book, launching a new brand, I decided to renovate my apartment at the same time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And you have a young daughter, Minty Mellon,
Yes.
whose name I'm very jealous
Yes.
of. That's the best name ever. And you're splitting your time between New York and London as well.
And yeah, I have a design studio in Paris. And here in New York. All my shoes and bags are manufactured in Italy. I'm working with the same factories that I've worked with for 15 years. So it's a pure luxury product. But what I'm doing is I'm going to take a smaller margin so I can deliver an amazing product to my customer at a more affordable price point.
Yes. Yes.
So that's, and then also the ready-to-wear is, what I've done with the pricing is actually an interesting hybrid, because the ready-to-wear is a dress is about $800, a skirt is $600, which is a contemporary price point. It's not a pure designer luxury. But if you had a brand at that price point, you'd normally find the shoes at $300.
Right.
But my shoes are higher because they're pure luxury. So I have high contemporary clothing and pure luxury shoes and bags.
Is there a brand in the luxury space or the contemporary market, or even unrelated, that you think is doing a really great job of establishing themselves as a brand, but also activating themselves digitally?
Burberry has been a real pioneer in that area. And, you know, and I'm really working with social media today, because for me also, so different from when I started Jimmy Choo, we didn't have social media, and you know, times have changed, and just having that direct communication with the customer is the most important thing today. When I started Jimmy Choo, there was a new wave. Accessories were exploding, and magazines realized that if they put an actress on the cover, their readership went up. Right. So the whole celebrity and fashion relationship started, and that's why I took Jimmy Choo to the Oscars within the first 2 years of business.
Yes.
And but today, it's very different now. Now it's direct to the customer. It's communicating with them on Instagram, on Twitter, on you know, things like YouTube, Android. All these get you direct communication, which is what they want now.
Do you find that there's a challenge between asserting yourself as a luxury brand, but also having that two-way communication? Because that's certainly a lot of what we hear in the luxury sector, that you want to establish yourself as being, you know, elite and sophisticated and top of market, but also approachable and someone that you can communicate with as a brand. So do you have any strategy in terms of social media and how you're going to structure that for the Tamara Mellon line?
Yeah, I think the being elite is an old-fashioned view. I think you can be absolutely luxury and still communicate with your customer. So no, I'm direct, you know, all the time myself, talking with them. And I don't think designers should sit in their ivory tower and not communicate with their customer.
Right, right, right. You mentioned Twitter. Is that your favorite social media platform right now?
I like Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, Instagram is really fun, and now you can put little videos out, which is great. Yeah, so Twitter, Instagram, you know, we still do pretty much everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this with us. We love your new book. Again, it's at the back if anyone would like to pick up a copy, but I'd love to turn it to the audience and ask if you guys have any questions, anything we haven't touched on.
When will the clothing
In November. Yeah, it'll be in Bergdorf's, Neiman's, and Net-a-Porter, and Harrods in London, in case anyone's there, in November.
Fantastic.
I have one. You mentioned while you were in your discussion that at one point you were one woman out of an entire board of all men, especially for products that are targeted towards women. How did you feel in those moments, and was there ever a time where you had to like strongly advocate, particularly from like a female perspective?
Yes, the difficult thing was that all the men on my board were from the private equity industry. So your interests are not really always aligned with their interests. They're really looking at just getting, EBITDA profits up so they can sell. They want to come in and out as quickly as they can. And as a founder, you really care about the quality of the product, the people working in the business, and also what's very difficult for them, because it's not tangible, is it's an emotional business. It's an emotional connection with the product. So you can predict something that's going to sell in the future, but they may not have the confidence to put the money behind it because they don't understand why, but it's just an emotional connection.
So I have one last question before we wrap. You share with us so many personal stories in My Shoes, really difficult things that you went through your childhood, in your adult life. And something that really shines through as you read the book is how resilient you are, and that you use these tumultuous experiences really to become a stronger person. And that's something that led you through even to your business career. How did you manage to do that? Because I think that's something that we as people struggle with, and you've done an amazing job at just growing and becoming even stronger through those difficult times.
Well, part of it really is growing up in an alcoholic home. The only benefit, you have a very high tolerance level for abuse or dealing with difficult situations, because you're used to it. So other than that, and then knowing really it's believing in yourself. You've just got to believe in yourself, and passion. You've got to keep following your passion. I always say, passion is the #1 thing. Once you have that, everything else follows. Yeah. But definitely, I think because I was so passionate about the product, and that company it ran through my veins, like the blood sort of runs through my veins, that I kept fighting for it.
Okay, well, thank you so much again. It was a pleasure having you here. Best of luck with the new collection and everything else. I'm sure we'll hear about something else that you're launching very soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.